Welcome to the West Midlands and Warwickshire Green Business Podcast. Subscribe now for more episodes. Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Green Business Podcast. I'm Jonathan Howl, Energy Advisor for the Decarbonisation Net Zero Programme, and as usual, I'll be your host for today's session. Now, as regular listeners will know, at the Decarbonisation Net Zero Programme, we help businesses reduce their ongoing energy consumption, and we also provide grant funding of up to 50% to help support those energy efficiency improvement projects. So today, we have a really compelling case study to bring you, which I'm hoping will show the benefits of engaging with our programme, but it will also demonstrate the commitment of a historical local business to modernising their processes and in turn benefit from significant cost and carbon reductions. So the next 20 minutes or so does promise to be a really informative discussion. So to help me with today's chat, I'd like to introduce today's special guest to the session, Alex Patrick Smith from Hinton, Perry and Davenhill. Good morning, Alex.
Morning, Jonathan.
Good morning.
Pleased to be here with you on this podcast.
Yeah, and thanks for joining. Should be a good session today. So just to sort of set the scene and put a bit of context in today's session, can you start off by giving us a bit of history of your company, please, and sort of explain a bit more about your connection to the local area as well, if that's possible?
Yeah, we're a manufacturing business. We manufacture bricks and clay roof tiles, amongst other clay building products that have been manufacturing in the same factory since 1805.
Wow, okay.
Located in Dudley, and we are a sort of medium-sized business. We manufacture, give or take, 7 million roof tiles and about 7 million bricks a year.
Yeah,
and all of that on the same site.
Okay, good stuff. Thank you very much. So in terms of your product then, because I looked on your website before this session, I see you make some very unique products. What sort of makes those products so unique in terms of the product size and in terms of their durability, if that's possible?
Well, we really sort of focus on what we describe as long life products that really do stand the test of time.
Yes.
So our brick range is an engineering brick range. Yeah. These are bricks really defined by very low water absorption and very, very high crushing strength. And historically, they were used in Victorian times for bridges and viaducts and those sort of things. Yeah. But also in severely exposed brickwork situations. Yes. And that is really the sort of heritage that we come from. So we try and, in everything that we do, ultimately make a product that'll last. And when we say last, we're talking about hundreds of years. Yeah. And we still have projects where we're taking off our products these days, and you realise that they're in many situations in perfect condition, having already been on there for 100 years. Yeah. So
built to last, basically.
Exactly, and we sort of have the evidence to back it up as well.
Yeah, good stuff. Thank you very much. So just jumping forward to obviously the main crux of today's discussion then, which of course is energy and so on. I would imagine, knowing your business and knowing what you do, that your business is a very high energy user effectively, because obviously the nature of what you do. So could you give me a bit of background then, and obviously give our audience a bit of background to what your typical energy consumption would be per annum, but also what I'm interested in is what challenges you've got in terms of decarbonising when you're such a high user, if that's possible.
Well, we use primarily natural gas for drying and firing our products. So the first thing we need to do is take the moisture out of the clay before it goes into a kiln, and we need to get that down to less than 2.5% moisture content before we apply the heat that we do in the kiln, which goes up to 1130 degrees. And if you imagine a kiln for bricks contains 25,000 units in there, quite a sizable thing, we then have to apply a lot of heat in there to generate those temperatures, because what we're trying to do in that is transform the minerals within the clay into something that is not going to break down following the firing process. So the firing process is the absolute key component of the long-term durability of the products that we manufacture. So, and we do consume a lot of electricity as well, but it kind of it's a much smaller component. So if you think we, over a whole year, will consume about 40 million kilowatt hours of energy for our gas consumption, and about 3 million for our electricity consumption.
Yeah.
And you can see that's obviously very skewed towards the gas because of the intense heat that we require in the firing processes.
Of course, I can see how much of a high user you are, because when I'm doing my audits, which we'll come to next, there is a very, very loose correlation between size of a business in terms of employee size and their usage. That's one of the highest ratios I've seen between you've got a reasonably low sort of employee total and a very high energy use. And obviously, I understand now the kilns obviously need the natural gas, which is why that is so high. So thanks for explaining that one to us. So just jumping on to what I've just alluded to, the actual energy audit then, and the role that we play here at the Decarbonisation Net Zero Programme. Could you just talk us through what that energy audit that we provided you with gave you, sort of what did it identify, but also how did you come about engaging with us as a programme? How did that sort of initial engagement process work?
The thing about the audit for us is trying to understand at a very granular level where the energy is consumed and how is, it's the starting point really of understanding how you then go and manage your energy usage and efficiencies to get the improvements that we're obviously looking for. And we've been sort of working in this space for a while, trying to find whatever solutions are available to us. And I went to a Repowering the Black Country event that was held, I think originally it was put together by the Mayor of the West Midlands at the time. And I came across ProEnviro at that event, and we thought to help us on our journey, we need to have some expertise in terms of understanding really this space with a high degree of sort of technical input. Yes. And we felt really that, having done quite a lot ourselves, you tend to do the easy bits first, and everything gets much more challenging as we go through. And we're very much focused on, finding solutions for net zero 2050, which is 25 years away. And in a business like ours, we're very capital intensive, and the cost of making these changes are some of these numbers are eye-watering, really, to be able to make these transitions either in the space of energy efficiency or fuel switching to other lower carbon fuels that will deliver us the thermal input that we require. We felt really that we wanted to engage wherever possible with organizations that are going to be able to help us in this space, but also really try and see what funding is available to assist us really in delivering these changes towards that goal.
Okay, fantastic. So just to explain to our audience a bit more, ProEnviro are one of our delivery partners in the programme, and ProEnviro do a lot of the more energy intensive and manufacturing audits. Well, we will always try and match your business. If you're listening and want to engage, we'll try and match your business with specialist skills. So ProEnviro have a lot of specialism in this area, hence why they did the energy audit for Alex on site. So just moving forward then, I imagine, Alex, that it's a case of you've done a bit of the low-hanging fruit yourself already. So really then they were looking at a more granular level of what they can recommend to reduce the energy consumption. What sort of typical things did the report show you then in terms of the projects to improve things on site?
Well, I think one of the key things that came out of all of this is that we needed to have metering at a local motor level, I guess, and also on individual kilns and dryers, where we'd had metering, we knew what our overall consumption was, and we obviously have half-hourly data as well from our electricity bills, but we weren't that confident of every bit of plant being used in the most efficient way possible. So a micro metering program was one of the things that came out of it, the energy report, that we thought actually to be able to measure our changes going forward and to understand where we really need to focus our attentions, it would be helpful to have that greater granularity and visibility to see what's what in terms of our energy consumption in different areas of the plant.
And I think the phrase I've used a lot on previous sessions is you can't manage what you're not measuring, basically. So that obviously gives you more control over what's going on site. So fantastic. So was there anything else then that ProEnviro recommended in the report in terms of I've got the measuring bit, that's fine. Was there any sort of other projects that they suggested is a good idea to you? And do you have any? Maybe you haven't got them to hand, but I'm looking for maybe some cost and carbon savings that they suggested to you as well, if that's possible.
Well, another area that we have invested in with the programme is on improving the thermal efficiency of one of our brick kilns.
Yes.
And we felt really by upgrading the fibre lining of the kiln, there would be less heat loss within that structure.
Yeah.
And that's a key area really to make sure that every bit of heat that's going into a kiln actually ends up where it's required in the product, rather than being lost through the structure or in fact exhausted out to the atmosphere. So we felt that was something that was achievable within the budgets that were with the sort of scale of things that are available through this program, and one where we felt we could certainly generate some savings in our gas consumption. We're just at the stage really of being able to kind of make comparisons now to how different kilns are performing and so forth. But what we don't have is the historical data of that kiln before the metering was put in place, because both things happened at the same time.
Got it. That makes sense.
But it's a pretty logical assumption to make that by improving the insulation of the kiln, that you're going to have less heat loss out of the structure. Yeah.
Just out of interest, were the kiln you're referring to, was that an original kiln from when you were established back in 1805, or is that like a newer kiln? Just out of interest.
Well, the kilns have evolved over the years. We used to fire with coal, so the kilns were designed around that fuel source. We then moved to another fuel, which is still using coal as its base, but it's called producer gas, where you're running steam over coal to generate the fuel for the kilns. And then after that we moved to LPG, and then to natural gas. So there is a history of evolution in fuel use within the business, but the kilns tend to be designed around the way that the heat is being delivered in there. So the current kiln designs have been in place probably close to 45 years with natural gas burners.
Okay, understood. Thanks for explaining on that one. So just to set the baseline then, so ProEnviro have recommended more metering to help understand the energy consumption on site. They've obviously looked to improve the kiln insulatory properties as well. Was there anything else they dropped in there out of interest?
Well, they did. There was, they were recommending solar panels on our roof, which is something that, we are taking forward, but outside of this particular program, because there was a limit to the amount of money that is available. And what we worked with in putting our application forward was ultimately the sums that were available, and so that kind of framed things to a certain extent.
So it's given you guidance for now, and then obviously some guidance moving forward as well. So in regards to the actual bits you took forward to grant stage, then would you mind explaining to our audience how much grant you received and against what capital cost that was?
Yeah, so it's a sort of match funding grant. So we were needing to put in half the money, and the other half was matched by the programme. The total funding available was £100,000, and we did actually have a third project that we tried to include in there, but the nature of the funding doesn't cover feasibility studies, and we were looking at a heat recovery feasibility study.
Yeah.
So we'd originally built the thing up to make use of all the money that was available. I think when it came down to it, we've had, I think it's just, and I haven't got the exact number in my head, but it's around £90,000 of grant support, and therefore £90,000 of money that we put into it ourselves.
So thanks for explaining. So just for our audience, you can see the benefits there of the money. And I'll explain a bit more about the actual allocation and how you access that later on in the session. But it just shows you that this match funding is there to get these projects underway, basically, and get you off the ground, essentially. So I ask this question a lot, to be fair, in these sessions, and I don't want to be negative, but I'm just wondering, were there any challenges that you experienced through the process of engaging with us, or even maybe with the projects themselves? Any negative things that you would have done differently, maybe, if you were to go for the process again?
No, I mean, I think, I compare this to grant applications that are put in for the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund money that we've also tried to access. And this has been a much, much simpler process in terms of the administration, in terms of the grant application. Yeah. There's support available. And although the quantum of money is different, we found that for a business our size, where we don't have a department of people, putting these grant applications together, that we just found working through all of this, I'd say, to be relatively easy. That's something that I think is really important for the nature of the businesses that I think are being targeted with these sort of operations, really, because it becomes so complicated sometimes that you just can't see a way forward. And what we've also really felt was that, this grant money, it's all about how much actually ends up delivering carbon savings at the end of the day, because it's not really the investment that's gone into it. It's how many grams or kilos or tons of carbon that are being removed from our process that is really what we ultimately assess as the success of what we're doing. And we do have some big challenges going forward that go beyond the scope of the funding that's available here. And that's, things like heat recovery, trying to put in place systems to capture heat that's going out with the flue gases and reusing that in other processes. And we're also engaged in an industry hydrogen project to look at fuel switching and see whether that is a viable way forward. And that's something that's being done at an industry level, because it's not specific to a particular company. But we've also looked at oxygen enrichment of our firing processes as a way of, again, making savings in carbon. But again, that was outside the scope of this particular project. But just wanted to really sort of paint the picture that we're looking at every possible area. And, we feel this is a vital thing for us to do as a business, to be on the front foot, looking at ways of decarbonising.
Yeah, fantastic. You've given a really good answer there to pretty much my last question. I always sort of ask what is the pathway for the next sort of 20, 25 years? And you've explained that really well. So it does sound like you've got a lot of work to do, and you're obviously, sounds like you're ahead of the curve as well with in line with your sector, basically.
Yeah, we just to finish that last bit off, we're also looking at carbon capture as a piece that could deliver something for us at the end of the chain, because even if we decarbonised the fuel going in, there is still some process emissions that come from firing the clay that would still mean there is some CO2 emissions were we to completely decarbonise every other area. So we do look at carbon capture as something that could add a valuable component as well in there.
Okay, fantastic.
So there's a bit of a hierarchy for us. It's energy efficiency, fuel switching, and then carbon capture as the final piece.
Yeah, great answer. Thank you. So final question then, really, obviously, just to close the session off, what advice would you give to any other companies that are on this session or listening to this session, rather, that are considering engaging? What advice would you give them moving forward?
Well, I think the first thing is engage. And I think, engaging potentially with a partner who's involved in one of the delivery partners for the program, because it just helps get a broader understanding of how the process works, what's required, and getting into the nuts and bolts of putting grant applications together and understanding what's eligible and what's not eligible. Trying to do these things on your own is challenging, and I think with a delivery partner, it just helps to have that support, and I think it helps encourage the whole process and takes everybody along with you.
Okay, fantastic. So lovely. That's been a really interesting discussion. So thank you for your time this morning, Alex, and also thanks for explaining a bit more about the way your industry works and what challenges you've got. I found that really interesting, and I hope our audience did too. So just to wrap up then from myself, and I want to give you a bit of a background again to the program. So the Decarbonisation Net Zero Programme can help your business by providing a free on-site energy audit that we've just talked about. Now, that will identify areas of inefficiencies, as we've just discussed. We're looking typically at things like your processes, your heating, your lighting, insulation, energy management, solar PV, and so on and so forth. So we will identify what you would achieve saving-wise by implementing those new technologies, and we can then offer you grant funding up to 50% to get those projects off the ground, basically. So if that is of interest, please follow the details in our podcast description. And just to put it into context again, the on-site energy audit is free, and the grant funding is added as a grant, and there is nothing to pay back. So check the details in the podcast description, engage, and we can get on site and give you some assistance. And then finally, if you'd like to learn more about Alex and Hinton, Perry and Davenhill, then their details are also in the podcast description. I'm Jonathan Howl. Thanks for listening.